try something, Mr. Sachs. 1 second.
Okay, folks, we're going to start in just about a minute. I'm going to bring up my share screen. We have a presentation for all of you. Mrs. Moore is the co-host. We have everyone on mute. And we will admit people who come in late, obviously. And we have the chat function off. We did receive a number of questions, but almost all of them fit into the presentation. And we did tweak the presentation to address extra questions that came our way. If you have a question during the presentation, you may certainly email it to me, jsachs@waterfordschools.org, jsachs@waterfordschools.org. I'll look at my laptop, and if something comes up that isn't covered or that we know isn't going to be covered in the next few slides, I'll include it toward the end. We have a frequently asked question slide at the very end of the presentation. So I think we're pretty much all here. I'm going to share my screen. And Mrs. Moore, just confirm if you could that the screen is properly shared.
Yes, it is, but you're just not at the beginning. There you go. Perfect.
Let me just fix my people so they're not right on. This is going to be a little bit tricky because I've got admitting people and I want to, give me 1 second, everybody. Appreciate it. Mrs. Moore, you sure you can't admit?
I am sure.
Okay.
I think it, yeah, I apologize.
That's okay. No, that's okay. It just takes up part of the screen, but that's okay. Okay, very good. So welcome everyone. We're very excited to have everyone here tonight, and we certainly and truly understand that this is a really unprecedented year and an unprecedented situation in which to resume a school. We greatly missed having the students here this spring. I missed saying hello to so many nice parents. I've received great emails, myself and Mrs. Moore, about how the spring went, and we really, really missed kids. And the students that came to pick up and drop off items, it was just so wonderful to see them. And it reminded us of our work. So the few students that we've seen always reminded us of our mission and our work, and that is to create wonderful citizens and great learners. And we're so excited to have our students come back on the 31st. So when we put together our reopening plan, we really wanted to focus and did focus on 4 major goals. It's always good to have an organizing feature when you create a plan. Mrs. Moore and I, before I go over the 3 goals, we're both part of all the district task forces. We read through all the DPH, CSDE, and other guidelines. So we're very familiar with both the state and the district reopening plan. And then what we did was we took all of that big information and then we whittled it down to the Clark Lane plan, which we are focusing on 4 things, and each encompasses a great deal. The first is safety for all, and within safety for all, what that includes is the hybrid model, which the district determined that one aspect of safety for all would be to reduce the number of students in the school at any given time. And then what we did internally in the school is we then cohorted those students. We'll explain that in a few slides. And that further reduces mixing of students and definitely gives us a conducive methodology for contact tracing. So 2 aspects of safety for all that are really big are hybrid model, which reduced the population, and going to a cohort. I will add that we have over 100 people opting for at-home full distance learning, so that also has decreased greatly the number of students in the school. By the calculations of myself and Mrs. Moore, we have no more than about 260 students, probably a little less, in the school on either Monday, Tuesday, or Thursday, Friday. That's less than half the amount of students that are usually in our school. The second major focus for us was student engagement, and we certainly want to create a great learning experience for your children. that was tricky because we're coming off of a difficult period of time. And when we get to a few different slides, we'll show you how we intend to engage students. But we really want to engage students the very first day we see them, and that will be challenging, but also our pleasure to engage your students back in school. We want to, of course, offer high quality learning, and I will explain the synchronous learning system and the resources we have available. And we, of course, absolutely want to be a calm and supportive school. We want to welcome kids back. We want them to feel calm. They went through a lot. We all went through a lot. And we want to try to restore a sense of normalcy as best as we can. And we think we can do that by creating a very calm and supportive atmosphere for all students. Still admitting a few people, so I'm going to go to the next slide and try to talk and look at the waiting room at the same time. So give me one moment. Okay, so the first thing that I mentioned was cohorting. So you all know what the hybrid model is. That's when we take the alphabet and go from A to K and L to Z, and people come in on different days. So I'm going to let Mrs. Moore explain this slide on cohorting and the hybrid model. Mrs. Moore.
Thank you. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for taking time to be with us, and hopefully we are able to answer some of the things you've been wondering about over the past few weeks and months. So I'm going to start with this idea of cohorting because that's one of the biggest strategies that we are using to keep kids and staff safe when they are here in school. So the idea of the cohort is to create a small group of students, which started as being a class. So a group of about 20 students, and we put plus or minus because a class can range from generally 17 to maybe 24 students here at Clark Lane, but we use 20 because it's a nice round number. So that's where our cohorting started. And at Clark Lane, you can think about that as a homeroom. So every student is always assigned to a homeroom. And that homeroom is now, it started at about 20 students. It is now reduced, as Mr. Sachs said, by those students who have opted for full distance learning, who will be joining in virtually. And then it's been divided in half into the two groups based on our hybrid model. So one of the, in my opinion, a comforting factor is knowing that in any given classroom, there will be less than 10 students physically in the room together at any one time. That group of students will stay together for the full day. They will generally be staying in that same room that they entered in the morning, their homeroom, and it will be the teachers that will rotate in. And that's a great departure from the middle school environment. Usually after homeroom, the bell would ring and everybody would get up and they would start their very unique schedules, traveling to different classes and to different aspects of the building. So our building is going to operate very, very differently because of all of the parameters that we've been working in. But the idea is that the kids will stay together in their homeroom, classroom for the majority of the day. They will leave to go to the field house, the old gym, or outside for their PE class every other day. PE class will run under the guidelines from the State Department of Ed in terms of what is safe activity for them to do. And then on some occasions, the cohort may travel to unified arts classrooms where there's specialized equipment. So the culinary classroom is listed as an example. When it is appropriate for the culinary students to be engaging in a small cooking activity, or the tech ed students to do 3D printing, they may travel with the teacher in an organized way to those locations because the equipment there is unique to that setting. The other piece of the cohorting is that small groups from within the cohort may travel to other classrooms for academic support. So small groups of 2, 3, 4, 5 students may leave together to visit another teacher to get a specific type of intervention. A key thing to note about that is whenever students leave to get an intervention, they will not be joining with students from other cohorts. So that was part of Mr. Sachs, if you advance one slide, that is part of the design of the cohorts. So much of our schedule, once the students make course selections in the spring and we enter all the things they have to take, like math, science, social studies, the computer kind of randomly generates schedules. That was done in the spring to plan for a normal, and we were hoping to be able to have a more typical school year, and we all know that that didn't happen. So Midsummer, we had to work on developing these cohorts, these small groups of students that would stay together. And there were many, many layers of criteria that we had to use in order to be able to deliver the academic programming that every student requires per Department of Education requirements, per IEP requirements, et cetera. So those criteria are listed here in grade 6. That criteria is special education or SRBI intervention classes. Math recommendations from elementary school were used to create balanced heterogeneous classes with teacher differentiation. That's a similar model as to how instruction was delivered in the elementary school. And we looked at instrument and music choice as well. And we'll talk about that in a few minutes, how that instruction will be delivered. In 7th or 8th grade, we add in the world language selection that students have made. So those things, although they reach 3 or 4 bullets on our slides here, really account for about 12 different criteria that we had to use, because within special education, there's 4 or 5 different programs that we offer. Within SRBI, there's the same 4 or 5. World languages have 3. Math classes in 7th and 8th grade, we offer an accelerated path and an algebra class in 8th grade. So those students needed to be cohorted together, layered on top of any world language they were taking and any other intervention. And then the instrument, what we tried to do with instruments and music choice was to group kids so that they can be pulled in small groups for lesson type instruction. So at this time, band, chorus, and orchestra cannot meet as large group ensembles. Our ensembles are upwards of 30, 40 kids that would meet together at a time, and that just can't happen now. So those teachers are going to generate their individual teaching schedules, and there will be time during the day that they will be pulling small groups from these cohorts to have lessons. And in many cases, those lessons, you know, there might be a group of saxophone players in a cohort that will go together for their music lesson, and then they will return to their cohort. Again, not mixing with students from any other cohort, much like students would leave to receive ELL service, math intervention, anything like that. Those small groups will leave the cohort, and then they will return to the cohort, not mixing with kids from other classes. Mr. Sachs, would you like to add anything to that? And if not, you can move to the next slide.
Sure, we'll go to the next slide. Did we talk about the looping team? I was looking at my email.
Thank you for reminding me. That has been a question that has come up, and I did have a note. So because of all of the criteria, we have been able in the past to offer one team, and it's varied over the past few years of whether the looping team has looped from 6th to 7th or 7th to 8th. This year, it was scheduled to loop from 6th to 7th. That was our cormorants team. So if there are students or parents on this call who have students on the cormorant team, given all of those 12 plus constraints that we were dealing with, and the fact that there were only 2 classes of 7th graders that would make up that looping team, it just did not work to maintain that looping. So unfortunately this year we were unable to honor the looping. We also did have 2 changes in teaching staff to that team anyhow. So it's possible that by spreading out the teachers, that the students will still have at least one of the teachers from that team that they had in the past. But the looping, as we have traditionally done it, we were unable to maintain in this particular school year, given all of those constraints. Thank you for reminding me of that question.
You're welcome. So we'd like to talk to you next about the synchronous learning model. So we're changing what we did last spring to something that is more of a live experience. So the synchronous learning model means that the students will tune in during their class time if they are on full distance learning, or if it happens to be that they are not in school because it's Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, or the opposite. Teachers will be presenting lessons 5 days a week, all unique lessons. Students will be joining the lessons through Zoom, and they'll use Google Meet to receive their assignments and turn in things. Lessons will be presented using a really high quality audio, microphone, and a screen share that the teacher has of their interactive board. We can't fully stream HD video from every teacher because of the fact that our network was never designed to do that. And if we had 60 teachers doing that, we would not be able to use our network. So we are advising teachers to use the video feature less frequently and use the screen capture quality of Zoom like we're using right now, and the audio, which greatly reduces the bandwidth. But occasionally teachers will check in, and I'm sure that in intervention, small interventions class, the live video will be used more frequently than just the live audio with the interactive smartboard being caught. So students will tune in, and there will be a variety or a range of the use of synchronous learning, especially the first few weeks as people get used to managing two systems at once. Our teachers are very adept at all of these technologies, but it's a slightly different model than we were using in the spring. And so we will at some point next week release to you a sort of an overview of the first week's orientation transition model that the teachers will be using the first week. And then the second week, they'll settle into this synchronous learning program. We will take extra measures to try to avoid sharing physical materials, but they will be available to distance learning students, fully distance learning students. Teachers can gather that material, and we can either mail it out or you can pick it up. Students are also urged to bring a personal Chromebook or similar device with the appropriate power cord, because we will have charging strips, power strips in the classrooms. And later, in a few weeks out, there will be some opportunity for some more Chromebooks to be issued by the district. But all of our devices are out right now because of what happened in the spring. So we think that the synchronous learning environment will take care of a lot of parent concerns that their teachers, their students, their kids were not able to do enough, back and forth one-on-one and actually see their teachers. And we feel that it's going to really help engage students. So you just be patient with us as we get that up and running. The first week will definitely be a transition orientation week. The second week will be fully up and running synchronous learning. And there is a bit of a learning curve, just like there was this past spring with Google Classroom. Why are we using Google Zoom over Google Classroom or over Google Meet? Well, if everyone used the Google Meet video, we would definitely crash the system, and even the Google Meet audio uses more, bandwidth. So we're going to go with the Zoom, with the Google Meet as the organizing feature of the classroom. Okay. I'd like to also, I had a lot of questions about drop-off in the morning. So our priority, once again, if you get back to the first part of the slide, was safety for all. And so drop-off, both in the back of the school where parents drop off and at the buses, is all designed to socially distance students and have students go immediately to their cohorts. So I'm going to first go through the regular drop-off of parent drop-off. So it begins at 7:15, and you go to the back part of the school, which is the main office, main entrance. And I will be out there with Officer Lane, and we will section off an area with cones, and there'll be plenty of signage. And you'll pull up, and we'll let kids out about 4 to 5 at a time. They'll enter the same entrance they always have. They'll have an opportunity to purchase a breakfast in the cafeteria, all socially distanced. And then they will proceed directly to their cohort, which means they go right to the homeroom that they're assigned to. As they come in, we'll make sure everyone has a mask, and they use the hand sanitizers that are all mounted right near the entrance. Just as a side note, if a student loses a mask, forgets a mask, we have extra masks for students. So don't worry if your kid gets out of the car, you drive away, and you look in the mirror and there's no mask. We will gladly give out a mask to every student who needs one. We're not saying we'll provide 500 a week, but if you could, don't worry if your child loses, drops it, it rips, whatever. We will have those. And students who need a breakfast can purchase a grab-and-go breakfast. They take that right to their cohort, and they report immediately to their homeroom, and they go right to their desk. They can occupy themselves with reading a book, coloring, drawing. They can use their phone with their earbuds. And then once they get into class, the teacher will direct them to put their phones away until any kind of technology is needed. Let me go through the bus drop-off. So in the past, buses congregated in front of the school and all the kids got out in one fell swoop. We can't do that anymore because we don't want to have a huge group of people walking and crowding each other. So we have changed the system where as soon as a bus arrives, that bus will exit the bus under the direction of an adult and enter the building. Also, we'll check for masks and have them sanitized. They can also purchase a breakfast up near the library. We have a little cafeteria annex that we're creating up there. Students can purchase a breakfast, and once again, they go right to their cohort. And then we'll let the next bus out. And the buses should be at about half capacity or less. So we feel that we can, given the size of our building and the fact that kids are going to 4 different areas of the building, we can socially distance. We'll have the hallways marked and lots of signage, and we're going to really work on all of these lessons with the students the first week of school to really explain to them what to do when they exit. We'll also send home, this PowerPoint's also available. We'll talk to kids the minute they get off every bus the first day of school and out of every car. So they'll enter the building near the library. We'll make sure they have their masks on. Once again, if something happens and they drop it or break it or whatever, we'll give them another one. And they use the hand sanitizer. And they go right to their cohort. And they can occupy themselves similarly to the other students. Okay. Ms. Moore, you want to review the schedule, please?
Sure.
I'm not sure what that writing is on there.
What's happening?
I don't know.
Okay. So I'll just continue to review our daily schedule. For some of the parents that are on here, if you have 7th or 8th graders or even older siblings, you're familiar with how we run our daily schedule. Others, we may have some of our 6th grade parents on, and this is something we would usually cover in our orientation. So we will continue to follow a 6-day cycle at Clark Lane, which means that we assign every day that we are in school to a number: day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, or day 6, starting with the first day of school. We have a calendar that we will send and post out so that you can know what those days are. This will allow us to just keep a continuity within our school day, and should we be able to start at 100% back to school at some point, we will have the schedule all ready to go. So that first week of school, the first day is a day 1, the second day is a day 2, that first Wednesday will be a day 3, so students will follow their day 3 schedule, et cetera, et cetera. What that allows also is within every set of Monday, Tuesday, or Thursday, Friday, there will always be an odd day and an even day. And the nature of our schedule is that classes are scheduled either to meet every single day, which is the core academics, or they meet on an odd day or an even day rotation. So within the day, there are 4 core classes that, again, will meet every single day: math, science, social studies, and language arts. And then there will be 2 non-core classes that meet every other day. So on one day, students might have PE and world language. On the other day, they will have what we call UA, which is Unified Arts, and Academy. And we'll kind of go through what each of those looks like. So that's just a sample on the bottom. That's been our traditional schedule, and we are maintaining that schedule structure as we move into the school year. One of the things that's different in this schedule is the Academy block. And Mr. Sachs, if you move ahead.
Yeah, so I just want to pause and apologize. There seems to be someone on the call who is annotating and scribbling over the presentation. I just disabled that feature, so I apologize. I think what I'm going to do is shut the PowerPoint for just a moment, go to take off share screen, go back on, and clear that up. So if you just give me a minute. Thank you.
Okay, sure.
Are we good, Mrs. Moore?
We are good. Thank you, Mr. Sachs.
You're welcome.
Okay, so as I mentioned earlier when we were talking about cohorting, we lost a block of time essentially in our schedule when students would go to band, chorus, or orchestra. So that was a whole lot of students that we needed to have a place for them to go. In addition, we lost the opportunity to offer some of our elective courses that we've offered over the past, things like murals, culinary explorers, community explorers. So what we have created that also incorporates guidance from the Department of Education is a block of time for every student every other day in all 3 grades called Academy. And Academy is going to be used to identify needs that students have coming into this school year that maybe were developed over the time that we were in distance learning in the spring or otherwise. So over those first few weeks, as teachers get to know kids and we will ease into our academics, as you'll hear more about, and we will be giving some assessments. And we may determine that students who don't traditionally need some support might need some support in specific areas. So this Academy block will allow us to do that. And if there isn't a specific academic goal, there might be some social emotional stuff that kids need in terms of getting back to school. So this Academy block, again, it will be every other day. Every student will have the opportunity for this time period. This would be also a time that, as I mentioned within the cohorting group, the students were already scheduled to see an interventionist through SRBI or an IEP. They would go and see that interventionist during this time.
And just to fill you in philosophically, so we know that all around the country, students missed 3 months of school. So we want to be able to monitor any gap that formed during those 3 months. We know that some students definitely did experience a gap, and we want to have a period of time to be able to analyze and address that gap for any kind of future growth or support.
Perfect.
I'm going to go to the next slide, Mrs. Moore.
Yep.
Thank
Next
you.
slide. So another part of that every other day structure is the Unified Arts and World Language classes, and those are the Unified Arts component is a little bit different this year, and that is because well, in 6th grade, one piece that is different, the rotation will be art, music, and tech ed. So students will start with either art, music, or tech ed, and then in the other 2 trimesters in the year, they will get the other 2. So music is an addition to our Unified Arts rotation, and that has to do with the fact we used to have the Academy as a 6th grade only type support for a trimester, and because of the change to making that a full year, we were able to add music into our Unified Arts rotation. In 6th grade, the World Language program will remain the same as it has been over the past few years, which is that all students will attend French, Latin, or Spanish. And I say attend, but I mean the teacher will come into that cohort, and if the one cohort is going to be assigned French, some cohorts are going to be assigned Latin, and some cohorts will be assigned Spanish for that first trimester, and again, that will rotate throughout the year. In 7th and 8th grade, the Unified Arts, all cohorts will be assigned over the course of the year a trimester of health. That is a required course. And then cohorts will be assigned to either art, multimedia, or culinary. So again, as I mentioned before, we've had other electives that we've been able to offer and more choice to students, but given the constraints this year, these will be assigned. So a cohort they might have the health and then art and multimedia to fill out their year, or another cohort might start with culinary and then have health and art. So not every student is going to get art, multimedia, and culinary. They'll get 2 of those in addition to health in some formation over the year. Very similar to 8th grade, the health component in 8th grade is called wellness, and that will be balanced with either art, 3D design, or culinary. So that's the Unified Art rotation, slightly different than we've done in the past. World Language remains the same, but has been addressed kind of through the cohorting. So in 7th grade, students, at the end of last year in 6th grade, students made a choice as to whether or not they wanted to study Latin, Spanish, or French for the 2 years of 7th and 8th grade. And so the way that the cohorts were designed is that within the cohort, all of the students in that cohort have chosen the same language. So a cohort will have a Spanish teacher come in because those kids have chosen Spanish, or a different cohort will have the Latin teacher come in because the kids in that cohort have chosen Latin. And if students needed additional either intervention support or academic support through an IEP, they may be exempt from World Language, and they would go also during that period to get that support. In 8th grade, it's the second year of their world language study. So again, they've been grouped by their world language choice that they had started in 7th grade, so that all students can continue that study into 8th grade. And again, those 8th graders, if they do well at the end of 8th grade, are eligible to start in high school at level 2 upon recommendation from their teacher at the end of this year. So we definitely wanted to maintain the language that students had started in 7th grade to give them that opportunity at the end of 8th grade.
Yeah, and I want to note that we're definitely excited that we can offer Latin at the middle school, which is not a very common thing.
Yeah, so actually our first cohort of Latin students is entering 8th grade this year.
Just wanted to, one quick question came in. When will students find out about their cohorts? That'll most likely be tomorrow or Monday. They will find out about their cohorts, okay? That just came in on my email.
Perfect.
Okay, let me just proceed one more. Thank you. My mouse is really slow because there's over 160 people on this call, so it's funny how it's slowing down now. Okay, so let me tell you quickly about lunch. A lot of people have emailed me about lunch. So in order to maintain these cohorts, and also keeping in mind that there's 10 or less students per classroom, it's actually kind of easy to ask the students in the morning who brought their lunch with them, and the teacher quickly informs the cafeteria of how many lunches they need to deliver to the classroom, and the cafeteria personnel will then put lunches on carts and deliver them to classrooms. The students will have a half hour to eat. They sanitize their hands before they eat. They pull up their masks or take off their masks, put it beside themselves on their desks. They eat their lunch. They package it back up in the same package that they it was delivered in, and they just take that package and throw it out, go back to their desk and sanitize their hands. It's actually quite simple, and there will be hot lunch offered. That information will come out from our food services, who has done really an amazing job since the closure happened of providing meals for the community. But they're going to also figure out a really great way to make a really safe and sanitized way of eating in the classroom. And we have an extra custodian on duty to help keep things clean and help us keep things clean after lunch. So that's really a very straightforward story on the lunch. I'm just admitting a couple more parents. Okay, bathroom was also quite a large group of questions came on bathroom and how are we going to manage the bathrooms. So we have figured out a way to assign each team a color-coded bathroom, and there's a photo in the upper right of your slide, and you'll see on the door is a green sign. That is the green girls' bathroom upstairs 6. It's a little hard to see, but next to it, below the girls' room sign, the official blue sign, there are 2 hooks, and those 2 hooks have capacity to hold an issued ID. So every student will receive an ID, and on that ID will be their name, their team, their cohort, and it'll be color-coded, and the color coding will match a bathroom. So the student will sign out of the classroom when they need to use a bathroom. That way we know who used the bathroom and when, and that helps us later on if there's any kind of infection. They go to the bathroom, and they look at the door, and we're going to thoroughly and many times explain this to the students the first few weeks of school. They walk up to the bathroom, and if they see that there are 2 IDs hanging, they don't go into the bathroom. Now we're going to do this, and obviously if someone exits, they take their ID and leave. Within the bathroom, there'll be social distancing stickers on the floor, and there'll be all sorts of hand washing reminders and things of that nature. They're all over the school anyway. But I just want to say that we have a contingency plan, because I'm sure there are parents on the call right now who are saying, how are you going to rely on these kids to do this on their own? Well, we have a number of things we're going to put in place. We have a number of people who are going to be constantly in the hallways, both checking that bathrooms are being properly used with the right quantity of students, and that there's no crowding and there's no unnecessary people in the hallways. If anybody on a team decides that they are going to walk in on a bathroom that already has 2 hooks, that will fall under the discipline code of the school. We happen to have two different statutes that also are overlapping on our upcoming year that have to do with behavior during COVID that violates health protocols. So we're going to take very seriously students who not only misuse a bathroom, but high five another person or get too close or refuse or misuse a mask. I know it sounds a little harsh, but this is something that makes everyone safe following these rules. And we're going to most likely call home and have a pretty harsh and hard discussion, straightforward discussion about any student who violates those health protocols. And we will probably take appropriate discipline. That is just something that keeps everyone safe, and we want to stay open more than anything. So everybody has to cooperate and follow the rules. So we have a good plan for bathrooms. Now, if there's a point to where we feel that that plan is breaking down because a few students have gone in when there's two hooks being used with IDs, we can go to a different plan that we have in our back pocket, and that is a plan where we would assign certain segments of classrooms certain times to use the bathroom. And we'd rather not do that. We think that between myself, Mrs. Moore, a number of other people, Officer Lane, we can monitor the hallways all the time. We do anyway, and monitor the bathrooms. And our kids are pretty smart and really cooperative, and they're good kids. So we think that they will follow these protocols. But we're going to monitor it really closely, and we're going to ask you to remind the students, your children, to, when they come to school, follow all health protocols. It's really important. And then we get to dismissal. And dismissal isn't going to be all that much different from your point of view. Your child will still get off at the bus around the same time, and parents picking up their students shouldn't see a huge difference in wait time. But there's going to be a few changes. So we'll start our dismissal at about 2:25, which is earlier than usual, 10 minutes. But that 10 minutes will help us to really space out kids, both going to the buses and going to the front foyer where I'll be. Mrs. Moore will be at the buses, and we will dismiss by bus, and we will dismiss cohorts in a fashion over roughly 2 to 3 minutes between. That'll space kids out, and they'll be on the proper side of the hallway, and they'll go to the designated areas to be picked up. So you can kind of see what we have planned. We'll tweak it a little bit more, but the idea is at 2:25, a group of students will go to certain buses. The bus numbers will be announced. Group 2, a few minutes later, will go to parent pickup. Those homerooms will be announced, and we'll continue on until we've emptied out the school. And we will have lots of adults in the hallways to monitor social distancing, and that people are, orderly and quietly walking along and spacing themselves out. And we think that it's a pretty solid plan, and we will have plenty of people to watch over it. There'll be a rhythm finally established within a couple of weeks, and you'll sort of know when your child's going to be dismissed. We won't change it up. We'll do the same thing. And usually the buses arrive at the same time each day in their sequence. So within a few weeks, we'll all have a sequence down. The first couple of weeks might be a little bit of trial and error, but we think we have a nice system. Mrs. Moore, do you need to add anything to that one? Okay, very good.
No.
Mrs. Moore is going to talk to you a little bit about some other social emotional aspects of returning to school.
So I think we've just kind of filled your minds with a lot of logistics and a lot of things that make school look and feel very different than it has ever looked and felt before. And so we want to acknowledge that what the kids have been through, what we've all been through over the past few months, has been a traumatic time period. If we all think about what middle school was like for us, looking back on 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, it certainly did not include a pandemic. We did not experience this as middle school students. We're experiencing it with them as adults at the same time, and it has definitely created stress and anxiety amongst everyone to some extent. And returning to school in this model is in itself a stressor. We're hoping that what we've done today is help answer some questions and ease some anxieties about what school will look like and what it will feel like, but it still won't be real for you or for them until they go through those first few weeks and days, as Mr. Sachs said. So we want to just acknowledge that we recognize that this is stressful for all of us. We are recreating what middle school is all about, and which is friends, peers, social interactions, some of the social and developmentally necessary experiences that kids go through as middle school students, the peer conflict, navigating, developing independence. So much of that looks different than what we experienced, that we just have to be mindful of that as we return to school. And we want to make sure that we're supporting students, not just in filling those academic gaps that might have emerged, but in kind of addressing some of the stress that they have been feeling. So we're going to be doing that by starting slow. We weren't able to offer a normal 6th grade transition. We didn't have our 5th graders over in the spring. We weren't able to invite our 6th graders in this summer to walk through the building. So this first week of school will be about transition and orientation back to school. We're going to focus on building relationships with teachers, building these new routines, and we're going to do it in a calm and caring environment. We are all very anxious to see kids. We want to see kids in this building, and we're going to make sure that they feel as comfortable as possible. Our first units of instruction are going to ease into the academic demand. We are not going to start with the hardest unit in math right off the bat. We're gonna ask teachers to build in opportunities for success, build routines, build structures, because of the model that we're in. They're going to need those in order to be successful throughout the year. And we're going to offer some direct, specific SEL, socially emotional learning lessons, just to kind of tap in. How are you feeling today? What's going on? What support do you need? So if ever you feel like your child is struggling, please reach out to Mr. Sachs, myself, their school counselor, and we'll be able to support them.
Yeah, we're also encouraging teachers to take frequent mask breaks with the students. We have a beautiful campus here with a great track around it. And we really encourage teachers to use all the various beautiful outdoor areas of our school to hold parts of their lessons, to take breaks, to take walks. We are emphasizing with the teachers to just take it real slow and go easy on the academic load, until a few weeks in. And we really feel like that's a proper way to sort of reintroduce everybody to a place they really haven't been to in 6 months. I wanted to talk to you next about cleaning protocols and the like. I did get 2 questions that came in, so I really appreciate. A nice parent sent me a question about lunch, so I'm sorry if I didn't cover that. They can absolutely bring their own lunch to school. And they can bring their backpack, and they can bring small hand sanitizers. Also, when they have language, maybe it wasn't totally clear, but the language teacher comes into the classroom. So if a student has Spanish, the Spanish teacher comes into the classroom during the time they used to in the old days go to that teacher's classroom. And then I had one other question, was about, so we want the students to come in the first week with a binder and sort of just the minimal amount of materials. Their teams will send out minimal materials the first week, and then we're kind of building this. You don't need to bring in a device the first day. And so as we go through the first week of orientation, we'll be a little bit clearer on what items you need. We're giving every student a handbook to organize themselves. We print a beautiful handbook every year. And so they'll have a handbook. They should obviously bring something to write with, and maybe a trapper with sections for different core courses or other courses. But we'll give them a handbook and something that they can take notes in. But I think we'll just go slow on the materials too. We don't want people to rush out and get a bunch of things. And there will be a combination of using the computer and doing some handing in of items, but we're still working on how that exactly is going to look. Thank you for the question. Oh, okay, so the parent was distracted. The lunch question, I'm just going to repeat. You can send your child in with a lunch. We're
Yes.
totally fine with you. And certainly you can make extra for the office staff. We love food. Okay, I'm going to go to the next slide, please. So thank you for those questions. Is on cleaning and sanitizing. And make sure I can get appreciate your patience. There's 180 people on the call, so the mouse is a little slow. So we have installed a hand sanitizer in every single classroom. There is available to every teacher and in every office sanitizing spray, sanitizing wipes, and hand gel. I have gallons of hand gel ready to refill hand sanitizers. You do not have to worry about if you forgot to send the hand sanitizer. There is a ton of it in the school, but feel free to put hand sanitizer of your preference in your child's bag. We have increased custodial staff to sanitize throughout the entire day. All bathrooms will be cleaned twice a day, and everything is cleaned thoroughly in the evening. And Wednesdays, there's very deep cleaning. We've also purchased additional equipment, certain types of sprayers and machines that disinfect surfaces in the school. So there will be custodians regularly wiping down banisters, doorknobs, push bars, all sorts of things that people commonly touch every day. And we will go the distance to prop open doors from the inside to the outside to make sure students don't have to touch doors that other kids touched. So we're going to do our best to, put those protocols in as a daily kind of routine that we do. Ventilation. So there were some questions about that. So our school meets or exceeds industry standards. We have a MERV 13 filtration system. They are also changed out more regularly than most schools in the whole area. So a specific question like that could actually be directed to building and grounds. But if you have any questions about filtration, please ask. We have a beautiful, very clean health room where our nurse and our nursing assistant will be. And we also have an isolation room, which is a nice sized room where in the event of an infection, a student would be brought directly to that room, and we would put in the protocol. Now the protocol is we follow CDC, DPH, and CSDE. We consult with Ledgelight and our nurse, and there have been a few questions regarding what happens if there's an infection. So I'm not going to tell you I'm not a medical doctor, but we will immediately go into a protocol that would involve myself or the nurse immediately calling the superintendent who will contact Ledgelight, and then they will determine the situation and help us with that, and then we will also from there determine who we may ask to quarantine for a few weeks. I think we have to get to the situation before I can give you a clear answer on what we will exactly do, but we know that we will act as soon as something happens. And feel free to send me email me any individual questions about that. But we have an infection protocol that's stated both in the CDC document, our district opening, reopening policy, and I'm familiar with it. And then I work well with our nurses, and Officer Lane would help us. There'd be quite a few people who descend upon any kind of indication of an infection, and we would be very thoughtful in any type of recommendation for quarantining. But please be assured we have plenty of materials. We even have shields for our nurses and other things. So we have plenty of materials in the building. And like I said, your child forgets a mask or breaks or loses a mask, we have extra masks, so don't worry about that. Let me get to, I'm just letting a couple more people in. Okay, so I have a question on distance learning requirements, schedule, and expectations. So the people who have opted for full distance learning, there will be some guidelines issued next week regarding how you're going to contact the teacher. You will get a cohort just like everyone else. You're still part of a cohort, and you're still part of the 5-day learning that cohort is experiencing. So really the difference is the communication between yourself and the teacher. So we will clarify that next week, and the teachers will reach out to you. But just keep in mind, if you've opted for full distance learning, so number one, you are part of a cohort that exists in the school. So the student is still part of that cohort. Number two, if you decide to no longer be in distance learning, just email me and tell me, and we will within 2 weeks turn your child back over into in-person learning. And the same thing is if you feel uncomfortable a few weeks in and you want to go to full distance learning, just let me know. You won't have a 2-week waiting on leaving the school. Just keep, if you email me, we can go back and forth with a dialogue and we can help you out with any concerns you have. Mrs. Moore, anything on that I missed?
No, I don't think so. I think if one concern is the amount of time that a student who's on virtual learning, whether you're on for 5 days or all kids will be on for 3 days, those are part of the guidelines that we'll be working on next week and going through with teachers, kind of how to structure their classes and deliver maybe a mini lesson at the beginning that all kids would be engaged in, those in the room and those virtually. And then when we move into kind of guided or independent work, kids could then kind of go off screen. Certainly during mask breaks, the students who are home would be off. So students, we're not expecting that students who have opted for virtual learning will be on their computers like we are right now for 6 to 7 hours a day. That would not be realistic nor healthy. So there will certainly be times that they'll be kind of checking in, hearing the lesson, getting the work, and then they can go off and kind of complete that. If they need support, there'll be ways for them to get back in and get the support that they need from the teacher. So some of that will be standard, some of that will vary by class, and it will evolve. We'll give kind of some rough structure to that after we meet with teachers next week, but it will certainly evolve as we all get into the routine of this hybrid model.
So, whoops, I apologize for that. I'm going to go on to our last slide, which is frequently asked questions, and I'm also going to pull up some from email, and I'll try to finish this presentation up within the next 15 minutes. So one question asked both on the email and live and previously was 6th grade orientation information. So everyone will be receiving their cohorts in the next, either tomorrow or Monday, and we will be sending out a video tour of the school and full 6th grade orientation information. We waited on the tour because the school was really being used almost as a town building all these months, and we finally put it back together as a school. It was being used for a lot of purposes. So we're going to do our filming starting Monday, and we'll have a video tour out to you in a few days after that. We think once that's out, we'll explain everything about 6th grade. Another question was on the 6th grade. So the 6th grade accelerated math is going to be in one. So there's not an accelerated math class in 6th grade. We're combining the math classes. There's so few kids per class that the teachers will differentiate to the accelerated students. It'll give us a chance to analyze, because you have to remember these students all missed 3 months of the end of elementary school. So generally speaking, we go by that recommendation, but we're not as confident with missing that many months of mathematics that we can count on that right now. So we're going to have them for this year be in a differentiated class with both standard and accelerated students working side by side, and the teacher differentiates, and we'll have a whole bunch of experts and coaches and other people that will help to analyze and deliver instruction. Also, let me see. Question about Chromebooks. If students don't have a personal Chromebook to bring back and forth to school, is that okay? Well, there will be definitely days where students are going to need a device. So there will be some information coming out in the next few days about additional devices available that the district can loan out. That's okay, definitely for the first week or so, but I think by the 3rd week we would need students to have a device, but I wouldn't worry about that at all for the first week. So this is a great question that's been coming up a lot in the last few days. Will we allow gaiters in valve masks? So there is still controversy, and it's not exactly clear what the effectiveness of a gaiter and a valve mask is. So we're going to ask you if you could please, and we know people might have purchased gaiters. We're going to ask you to please send your students with a standard mask until we get that clarified. That might change a few weeks in, but there's two schools of thought on these gaiters, and it's not as clear as the CDC is making it, and one of our teachers called the CDC and sent me that information, and they were not that clear. So I'm going to ask if please people could not send their kids to school with gaiters. If you forget, it's okay, but in general, we prefer a regular standard mask. And like I said, again, we also have some if your student just forgets. I'm going to try to get through these fairly quickly. The students will need school supplies, and there will be teams. The school supplies, like I said, are pretty minimal at the beginning unless your team emails you and says that they need anything specific, but there shouldn't be anything too specific you need for the first week of school, which is an orientation week. There is still teams, so the cohorts are still assigned to a teacher, then the teacher is part of a team of 4 teachers. And this is a good question. Will the hybrid model be there for the rest of the year? A complete unknown. So I'm sorry I don't have an answer for that. I wish I did. I'm hoping that it's not, but I can't answer that because I'm not able to answer that one. I'm sorry. We will take care of allergies tomorrow all day, and next week there will be someone in the nurse's office to drop off any kind of medications or emergency plans, and we will compensate for students with allergies. So like I said, on school supplies, just the standard, notebook, pens, paper, that kind of stuff to take notes. We're going to give them a handbook. The handbook has in it an agenda. They can take notes on everything they need.
Mr. Sachs, I can just add that in our notification tomorrow or Monday will be team notification as well. So that's usually what we do send out is team notification, and each team has created a welcome letter to introduce the 4 core teachers on that team. And some of them have indicated some very basic school supplies, nothing super unique, but they do have some team specific things. Sometimes in 6th grade, there's some color coding that they like to use as an organizational strategy in terms of, one content area being, a red notebook and a red folder, and another being a green notebook and a green folder. So those letters will be included tomorrow or Monday, hopefully tomorrow. That's the goal.
Another thoughtful question about if a child is exposed to someone who tests positive for COVID, will it be required that that child be kept home and do full distance learning for 14 days? So I'm thinking that that's probably a yes. And what's kind of nice about this system, that is, if you call us and say that your child was exposed to someone not in this school who had COVID, I think the safe and sane thing to do is to say, well, please keep that student home for 14 days. But they won't miss any learning because they can do all these classes in the synchronous learning system. So that's kind of a nice thing. Obviously we're going to cross that bridge when we get to it. Medical forms, there's a question about dropping those off. You can certainly drop those off tomorrow or email them to me. I'll forward them to the nurse. I think I missed one. I just didn't want to miss any. Personal Chroma. Now I think we're set. Just got another one. There will be some more Chromebooks available. There's a question here. And we'll be sending that information out in the next few days, probably middle of next week, how to pick up Chromebooks. People who no longer need Chromebooks because they've purchased their own items since, there'll be a way to also drop those off at the school. So we're going to send out information probably as a district on how to drop off devices you may not be using and to pick up devices you may need, but you really won't need devices till the week following the first week of school, okay? On the little slide that's in front of you, there are unfortunately no clubs and sports. Everything is on hold right now. So there's nothing after school, so kids go right home after school. We may start up some clubs virtually after a few weeks. We'd like to try that, and we'll just have to see. Immunization rules still apply. People must be up to date coming into 7th grade, or at least have an appointment on the book. Please communicate with the nurse. I hope I was really clear that we will not be using lockers There's a few reasons for that. It cuts down on things we need to clean, because if you think about a locker, everybody touches lockers, bumps into other people's lockers. So no lockers. And it also reduces the space in the hallway when kids are at their lockers. So students will be able to go in two directions, but they're going to be asked to stay far to the right. And since we're not using the lockers, there's no barrier to them walking close to the edge. But there will hardly be people in the hallway. That's part of our plan, is to have really, to shut off the bells and have no crowding in the hallways. Masks we already talked about. We're urging you to please send them in with standard masks. And visitors, so we're going to limit visitors to essential business, but we have set up in our little atrium area. People who are familiar with the school know that you buzz in from the outside. We let you in, we buzz you in the second door. So in that little atrium, there's tables set up to drop off lunches and other items. There's also a drop box for important papers. And we'll still ask you like we do, hi, just wondering who you are and what your business is at the school. And we'll ask you the same standard question we usually do. I'm going to get to the last two questions. Give Mrs. Moore a chance to, let me see. Yeah, still questions about Chromebooks. Happy to answer those personally. Water fountains, great question. Great question. We forgot that in our presentation, so we really appreciate that. The water fountains are going to be converted to bottle fillers. So they're going to take off the little mouth units, not sure what those are called, and they're going to screw in these upside down U-shaped devices where you push the bottle against the device and it fills up automatically a water bottle. So that should solve any sharing of disgusting water fountains. Sorry, a little editorializing there. Is an iPad sufficient for this program? That parent I'm going to have to answer separately. I'm not exactly sure, so I apologize for that. I will get back to you on iPad. It may be, it may not. I don't want to give you the incorrect information. This is 6:06. I'll give Mrs. Moore a chance to say some parting words, and then I'm happy to say a few parting words as well.
No, I will just say, please feel free to reach out to us after you kind of process everything you've heard tonight. It's a lot of information, and we've met with our faculty twice in voluntary faculty meetings over the last 2 weeks to start to ease them into what school will look like. And they have come back with lots of questions. Although we've thought of a lot of things, there are some little things that I'm sure we have overlooked. So please feel free to continue to email us your thoughts and your questions, and we will address those. And then the only other thing that I'd like to say is that we are very, very excited about the opportunity to have kids back in this building. Since March 13th, it has been a very different place. It's been a very lonely place. We work in this business because we like working with kids and we miss kids. So, you know, we're doing whatever it takes to get them back in here. We are ready. We have work to do over the next 8 to 10 days, however many days it is until the first day of school, but we are ready. We will be ready for them to come in on the first day. Thank you for joining us tonight. Mr. Sachs, I'll let you close it out.
Oh yeah, I have two quick questions I'd like to answer. We will adhere to 504 and special ed IEPs, so just so people know that. Those people will be directly contacted about those types of meetings, and most likely we will be conducting those meetings primarily through Zoom, but we're not ruling out in-person meetings with parents for a few of those meetings. Get dropped off with a friend in the morning. Yes, your drop up and pickup is fine with your friends. We're not going to limit or change that. I would just suggest that you're wearing your mask when you pick up your friend at their other house, and we'll have you make sure your mask is on and wash your hands. And homemade masks, I got to think about that one. I mean, if they're thick cloth masks that a lot of people are wearing, I don't have a problem with that. So I think you just have to use common sense. If it's a mask that you feel that you would use around your grandparents, right, then I think that's an appropriate mask. And if it's something that we think is a little too flimsy or lets in too much air or whatever, we'll just offer you one of our masks and have a discussion. So we're not going to get upset if somebody took the time to make a beautiful homemade mask. So we're okay with that. So I just wanted to close out by saying that Mrs. Moore and I are really honored to have done the work for the district the last 6 months. The last month was incredibly intense, but it did present a huge mental puzzle of transforming a school. And the thing that motivates us is when we occasionally see a student and they give us a big smile and they say they're excited to come back. So we're very motivated to make this a really safe and enjoyable year in an unprecedented, strange world. Within a year, probably this will all be passed and we'll be able to go back to the old Clark Lane, which is a little more fun with a lot more opportunities for kids at this developmental level. So it's going to be a serious year. We'll make it comfortable for the students. We offer our hands for anyone who needs support. And at the same time, unfortunately, we have to be real serious because of health issues. So it's going to be an interesting balancing act. We rely on our parents who we love and who are always kind and send us really nice messages. We rely on you to message at home all the things we're messaging at school. I invite you to also constantly send us information and or questions. It's really helping us. And mostly we look forward to seeing your kids. So have a great evening, everyone. And thank you for joining us, almost 200 people. Thank you. Having trouble moving the screen share. Stop share.